Mom and Pop, take one.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay, the first questions here are pretty easy. So like I say, I ask you first, Mom. Okay, where were you born and when?
I was born in Grover, North Carolina, October the 25th, 1925.
Okay. And Pop, where were you born and when?
I was born in Lincoln, North Carolina, November 30th, 2022.
There we go. We need both of you in on this, I guess.
11/30/22.
Okay. Okay, do you remember how much you weighed, Mom, when you were born?
I think only normal weight, about 7 pounds or maybe a few ounces, I don't know.
About 8 pounds.
8 pounds? Okay. What was your mom's maiden name?
My mom's maiden name was Beatrice Peterson.
Beatrice Peterson. No, it wasn't Beatrice Peterson.
Beatrice.
Beatrice Black.
Okay. Pop, I was
She
scared.
married a Peterson.
She married a Peterson. What was your mom's maiden name?
Minnie Mabry.
Minnie Mabry. Okay, and I've got that on the thing. Okay. Okay, I may go back and forth here on this. Pop, where'd you live as a child? Where was your childhood at?
In Lincoln and Kings Mountain.
Lincoln and Kings Mountain, North Carolina. Mom?
Mine was Grover in Kings Mountain.
Grover and Kings Mountain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, this is good. This will probably take both of you for this one. How many brothers and sisters did you have, and what were their names?
Well, I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters, and I had got a half-sister.
Okay, and where were you in that? Were you oldest, youngest, middle?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Of 7 children.
Okay.
Well, 8 with my half-sister.
Okay, can you give me their names?
Well,
Don't have to be in order, just...
Catherine Whiteside, Crawley, or Peterson.
Yeah.
Peterson. Albert Peterson, Francis Peterson, Margie Peterson, Harold Peterson, Jerry Peterson.
Very good. And then your half-sister?
Susan.
Susan.
Peterson.
Okay. Okay. Pop, how many?
I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
And where were you in that mix?
I was the last one.
The last
I was
one.
number 8.
Okay, and what were their names?
Arnold, Doris, Paul, and Floyd was my brothers. Lillian, Beatrice, and Blanche were my sisters.
Okay. Well, you guys did that good. Okay, what's some of the earliest memories you have, Mom? What's some of the earliest things you remember?
Well, I can remember back when I was about 4 years old, because I had my tonsils taken out. My mom and dad, they had my tonsils taken out. I was about 4 years old, and they took me into Kings Mountain. That's about 5 or 6 miles from where I was born. Took me up these long, dark stairs to the doctor's office, and they cut my tonsils out in the doctor's office and then sent me back home. I remember my aunt bought me a pretty little dress and a little hat with a little ribbon hanging down the back. And I had a little toothbrush. She got me a little toothbrush with a little plastic elephant tied onto the end of it. And I got to eat ice cream and stuff like that.
For the tonsil thing, huh?
For the tonsils.
What about you, Pop? What's some of the earliest things you remember?
Well, I remember, some of my earliest remember was in Lincoln, a little area they call Coopertown. And we lived there before we moved to Kings Mountain. My dad was still living then. And he used to park his old T-model under the back side of the house. It was a shed, high enough off the ground in the back where he could pull his car in there. And I remember sliding down a slide board, and it was made out of plywood. And I run a splinter in my back, and they couldn't get it out, and it stayed in there. I don't know whatever happened to it, but they never did get it out. And then we moved to Kings Mountain after that, and I started to school in Kings Mountain.
Oh, that was before you were in school even?
Oh yeah, that was
Oh,
before
wow.
I was in school.
Wow. Okay, this one isn't on the list, but I got to ask it because what made you afraid of water?
Well, they said when I was smaller that I fell head first into a bucket of water. And I guess that's what made me fear water. I don't like water.
Okay. Okay. Where do you remember your mom and or dad working when you were a kid?
My mom didn't work when I was little and growing up. She stayed home and took care of the children. My dad worked in the cotton mill. He was what they call a twister in the cotton mills, where he twisted these yarns together that went through a machine that made cloths and tablecloths and upholstery material and stuff like that. They made all this in the cotton mill, and he worked kind of behind the scenes, his job. But
Didn't you say he invented something for the cotton mills? Or
I did.
oh, you do. Okay. All right. Okay, Pop. Where do you remember your mom or dad working when you were a child?
Well, I don't remember my mom working, but my dad worked in the cotton mill, and he's the one that invented a little thing behind what they call a drawing machine in the plant, and it was a little spoon-like that the yarn would go through, and if it broke or anything, that spoon would pop up, and it would shut the equipment off.
Oh, like a safety
Yeah,
thing then. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, Pop. What was a favorite game you and your friends or brothers and sisters played as a child?
Peggy, that was the name of it.
What was it?
We used to take little pieces, round pieces of wood like sticks, about the size of about an inch or inch and a half thick, and about 5 or 6 inches long. And we'd cut the end of it down, make it kind of a sharp, about an inch on one end, and we'd lay it up over another board like this, and we'd take a long stick about 3 feet long and hit that sharp end, and it would fly up in there, and then we'd hit it with that stick and see how far we could knock it.
It was called what?
Peggy.
Peggy, huh?
Yep, that was Peggy.
Okay, the first round of
Sounds
T-ball.
pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, all you could, yeah.
Yeah, like T-ball, only not as safe. Mom, what game do you remember playing as a kid?
well, I don't remember us playing too many games. We just got out and done our own thing and made up whatever we was wanting to play with. I never really had any special games that I played or anything
No.
like that. My brothers would make their own games up. They used to have, I don't know what they called it, but there was a little round wheel, a little iron wheel. Then it'd have a little stick with a little crook on it, and they'd get this
Hook.
wheel in there
That was the name of it. Rolling the
and
hook.
roll that wheel down a hill or around a road or whatever.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
They used to get into a tire and they'd roll each other around in a tire.
Yeah.
When we was little, we could do that, but
I've got my own tire I
Yeah.
roll around with me, yeah. Okay, when did you or where did you learn or how did you learn how to play a musical instrument? And what did you play? Mom?
oh, I banged around a little bit on a piano, but I never did really learn to play one. I didn't read music or anything like that. It's just that I picked out a little bit of tunes myself, but
Did you ever accompany anybody or play for anything?
I used to
No.
have to play in our church, our little church back home, but you know, I was nothing professional or anything like that, but that's all they had, and they just put up with me. The congregation just put up with me.
When did you start?
Well, I had to be a teenager, and I tried to mess around with the guitar a little bit. I played that just a little bit, and Me and my two sisters, we was brave enough to sing a little bit in the church. Of course, you know, our church was small, didn't have a whole lot of people, and I guess we didn't mind it so bad, but we could do pretty good though. Well, my sister Frances had a good tenor voice. She sung tenor. Of course, I tried to sing alto, and Margie, she sung soprano. And every once in a while, we'd get together and strum out a little tune.
Yeah. How many people were in the church?
Well, I think the Sunday morning that we got married,
151 people.
our sign in there, our picture in there shows how many was in the church. The sign in the church showed him he was in there. But usually about maybe 70, 75, or 100 people at the most.
Okay. Pop, how about you? When or how or where did you learn to play and what?
A man lived in the same village with us there at the Mooney Mill. He started having some of us guys, had us to get us a guitar and come over to his house, and he taught us how to make the chords on a guitar and how to get the rhythm and the timing of it. And he'd have us over there 2 or 3 nights a week learning how to play the guitar, and that's where I learned how to play the guitar. I never did know music, you know, like reading music, but if I heard a song, I could play it on the guitar after, say, 6 months or so going over to his house. And I've just been doing it ever since. And then we had a string band and there that some of the guys and myself got together, and we had a string band. And we played at the theater, and we played on the radio in Gastonia, North Carolina, and just different places, played for parties and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you play, you guys played and sang on your mom's dad's radio program too, as Sunday
Dad
program?
was on the radio, yeah.
Okay.
That was back in '53.
Okay. What do you remember, if anything, about the Depression?
Well, I don't remember a whole lot because that was back in the
That was the 30s.
in the 30s, and I was born
Started
in
in 29.
25, so I was only about maybe 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old, so I don't remember a whole lot about it.
You remember
Well, when it
anything?
started,
Or?
she was only 4 years old.
I just know that we was poor. We didn't have a whole lot going for us, so
Well,
I remember that.
She was born in 25, and it started in 29.
Yeah, but it lasted for 10
30,
years,
yeah.
so
Well, yeah. But
that's
the
why I
real-
was just
the
curious.
real depression, what we call the depression, was from 29 up to about 32 or 33. And because I know my dad died during that time in 31.
So what do you remember other than your dad dying? Did that make it life different for you guys?
Well, I know that he would buy stuff on Friday night to fix Saturday morning. My dad did a lot of cooking, and so anyway, but we, if he wasn't able to buy stuff at the meat market or something on Friday night, well, then we just we just eat whatever we had. It was mostly just gravy and bread on Saturday morning. A lot of times we'd have fish where he would clean and cook them for breakfast on Saturday morning. And I remember the time being so hard till we didn't have meat to really season the gravy with. We just had to make it out of what they call it spigot gravy. That was water out of the faucet when you didn't have the grease to go in it to make it seasoning. My mom would make it with water and milk and stuff like that, and put it together and stir it, get it brown, and then add the flour and stuff to it and make gravy, and we'd have that. And bread, that's what we'd have, yeah.
Spigot gravy, huh?
Called it spigot gravy.
You remember that too, Mom?
In the South, yeah.
Okay. Anything else either of you remember about about childhood in the Depression times?
No, I don't remember.
Remember a whole lot?
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
I
a
remember
whole
they
lot.
used to kill, ever since I could remember, why they would, in the fall of the year after the first frost, they'd always kill a hog. And they would cut it up and do what we call rendering. That was using the scraps, like the fat and stuff they'd cut off of the lean. They'd put it in a big three-legged wash pot outside and cook it down and make what they call cracklings out of it and get the grease out of it. They'd take the grease out of it and save that grease because they could use it for cooking. And I remember one time my dad and some fellows went fishing and they caught a turtle. And I was just little, maybe 5, 6 years old at the most. And our porch, you could crawl under the edges of our porch, and they just cut the turtle's head off and threw it up under the porch, and its mouth was open. And so they had told kids to stay away from it. But I managed to get my finger in his mouth, and when I got my finger in his mouth, he shut down on my finger. And my dad and them had to take a screwdriver and take it off my finger. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just the head hanging on my finger.
And here we're gonna have to pause it.
All right. So that question kind of leads into this next one. Pop, you may have already told us yours. What is a fond or fun? What is a funny memory of your mom or dad or both?
Funny memory?
Yeah. What's a funny remembrance you have about your mom or your dad or both?
I don't remember too many funny things about my mom and dad.
No,
My dad was more of a cut-up like, you know. He was more of a outgoing person. Mom, she was a little more the quieter type, I guess. They didn't have a whole lot of fun.
No, wasn't a lot of fun back then, huh?
No, wasn't a lot of fun.
No.
my mom, I can remember one story my mom told us that was funny about her. They lived kind of out in the country then. I wasn't born yet. But my mom was home alone with the kids. And they was neighbors, the distance off from them, you know. But one day she looked up and this one guy was under her doorstep for some reason or other. And she was sitting in the house. And she happened to see him out there under the doorstep, so she picked up the rifle that was sitting by the door. And she said, I don't know who you are, but whoever you are, I'm going to count to 10, and you better be out of the distance of this rifle. If you don't, I'm going to shoot you. And she said that guy come out from on that doorstep, and she never saw him anymore till maybe a month later. She was at a party from some of the ladies, and she was telling them about it. And some of them told her, well, she said, you better be quiet, Minnie. Said, that's his wife over there, you know. She said, I don't care, I'll tell her about it and tell her, be sure and tell him now that gun wasn't loaded when he run from it the first time, but we're keeping it loaded from now on. Yeah, that's, my mom was quite a talker. She would do things funny. Yeah, she
Well,
did
good.
things that was, in them days they were funny, today they may not be funny.
Well, that still sounds pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah, he run from an empty rifle, but she said, tell him that gun ain't it's loaded now, and it'll be loaded too.
Okay. What's a fond memory of your mom or dad or both?
Oh, I'm the fond memory.
Yeah.
My dad used to have, he used to play the old pump organ, and he played for services. We'd have prayer meetings in the home in them days, and my dad would play the organ, and my next oldest sister, Beatrice, she learned to play it some, but they would play that organ for the music in the house, you know, and I thought that was great to me, you know. I was just a kid. Of course, he passed away when I was 9, so it had to be before then. but it was great then, you know. And one thing that was great, I always got to sit beside of him at the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had a chair right beside of him at the table. You know, that was, to me as a kid, that was a good thing that I liked it that day. You know.
You weren't spoiled any as the last child then, huh?
Evidently not, because he didn't pick and choose them. If he told you to do something, you did it or else.
Well, my mom was a good cook. She loved to cook, and she was diabetic. She couldn't eat a lot of this stuff that she cooked, but every weekend would find her in the kitchen making cakes or cooking pies or doing something for the weekend, even though she couldn't eat this stuff. She always made it for the family. And I can remember she would always cook big meals if we'd have an evangelist or somebody that would come by. She'd always set a big table. She loved to cook, but I don't really love to cook that much anymore.
Yeah, my dad and them, they would never turn anybody away during the Depression years. You had a lot of people that would just, even riding trains and hobos and all that, and people that would come by, you know, be hungry. My dad would never turn anybody away. Whatever we had, he would share with them.
Well, my mommy'd always too. She wouldn't turn anybody away if they come to the door wanting something to eat. She'd always give them just biscuit and maybe a little something on it. Well, she'd always give them something to eat.
Yeah, my dad and mom would too, yeah.
It's good. This is just kind of a general question. I don't even really know why I came up with this one, but probably because of the time that they were living in and that. Do you think your parents lived a happy life, a satisfied life for the time and the people around them?
No, there's just times that my parents seemed happy, but there was a lot of times that they wasn't all that happy. And there was times that they really didn't get along with each other and made it a little hard on the children sometimes, the family, but you know, they tried. I just don't think that they ever grew up, really.
Yeah, okay.
My dad and them, I can say that they, I never saw them unhappy with each other. Things were just, it seemed like I don't know who was really in charge, both of them, I guess, all the time, but it just seemed real good, you know, because as far as fussing and carrying on, they never did. I never did hear them. My dad was always one that said it takes two to make an argument.
Well, I can't say that about my parents.
Yeah,
because
that was my dad saying that it takes two people to make the argument. One person can't argue by themselves.
Because mine did have trouble in that way.
Yeah, well.
They had kind of a troubled marriage the most of the time that I can remember. But they kept trying and kept trying, kept going to church and kept trying. My dad was a preacher, but they still had problems.
Yeah, it's no guarantee for no problems.
Yeah, my dad passed away, like I said earlier, when I was only 9, so I didn't get to see too much of him, you know, as far as in older life. I didn't have nobody, you know, I didn't.
Okay. We've probably touched on this again, but do you have a funny remembrance of when you were like in your teen years? Anything funny happened to you, or anything funny or adventurous in your teen years?
I don't remember too much in my teen years of that, but I can tell you a funny little thing that happened when I was smaller. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old. We used to have a cow when we lived in Grover. Grover was just a small town, not a whole lot of people.
About like Elwood is here.
It had a cotton mill in it, and it had a lingerie. mill where they made lingerie, and we had a cow because it was just kind of like open, you know, places and more like a little farm town than anything else. They just had one street in town with stores along that one street, and then the back side of the stores was empty, like for parking lots for them to bring their wagons, and they had hitching posts that they hitched their wagons to, or tied their horses up and things like that. So one day, it was coming up a storm, and Mom told me to go bring the cow in, because we'd just take her to places and tie her out and let her eat. Then you could do that. Now you can't do things like that. So I said, I went down and I got the cow, and the storm was coming, the wind was blowing, it was getting darker, and I was getting afraid. And I led the cow up the street right in front of all the grocery stores. Here I went up the street, and that cow just clopping along on the street. Needless to say, I got a lot of ribbons about that.
And you were about 8 or 9 then?
And the cow's name was Star. She had a white spot right in the middle of her forehead. And Mom and them would milk her, and we'd use the milk from the cow, you know. Of course, then it wasn't pasteurized or sterilized.
It was whole milk.
I'll pause a minute. Okay, Pop, you have any other funny memory of when you were a child or anything?
Just not offhand, I can't think of
Okay.
anything.
Well, I think the turtle head was pretty good there. Okay, and nothing as a teenager or anything? Nothing funny or adventurous happened to you as a teenager?
No, I can't think of anything just offhand.
Okay. Okay, what do you remember it was your first job? What was the first job you ever held?
Well, mine was in the cotton mill. I was about 18 years old before they let me go to work, and I went to work in the cotton mill. I was up in what they call quiller or spinning rooms, where they dealt with yarn and made big yarn go into little spools, like, you know, on a little long spool. They made it into fine yarn. And I worked there for quite a long time, and then I went into the weaving mill. I learned to weave a little bit. I worked there for a while, and then I learned to spin, and I worked there for a while. So all my teen years, I worked in the cotton mills. And then when we was smaller, we picked the cotton in the cotton fields. We grew up with that. And Mom used to take us to the cotton fields, and she'd fix some pork and beans and bread and stuff, and take them to the cotton field with us. And lunchtime we'd sit down tired and worn out and eat them beans and bread for lunch. Get up and go at it again until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was able to pick maybe 100 pounds a day if I kept picking, and we got $1 for 100 pounds. All day long we picked, maybe for $1.
Okay, Pop, what about you?
Well, of course I picked cotton too, but I went to work when I went to work for the cotton mill when I was 13. But I was working outside in the warehouse and unloading boxcars of bales of cotton, and we would roll them into the warehouse, because they had a huge platform out there in front of the warehouse. It was all concrete, and the train would pull right up beside of it, and we'd take two-wheelers, big two-wheelers, and unload them on that and roll them into the warehouse and stack them up in there, double deck them in there. We didn't have forklifts in them days, so we had to do it by hand. And I worked there until just before I was 14, and then when I graduated from that up to where I was working in the what they call an opening room. That's where you open up the bales of cotton and you roll them off on the floor. Then they would take so much of this one and that one and layers off of each bale and put it through what they call the hoppers. And I worked in that area there until a job came open inside the cotton mill. And I was 14 years old when I went to work in the cotton mill.
That'd be child labor today.
Yeah.
So did you? How far in school did you get then?
Eighth grade.
8th grade. What about you, Mom?
I went through the 9th grade.
Well, they own.
But at that time, you only went to school 11 years, so I was held back a year and a half. So I should have been through school, but I had a bad sore on my leg that wouldn't heal up. It was on there for a long time, and I had to go to school and get on the bus and ride with the other kids with my leg all bandaged up, and I was ashamed of it. So when I got to be old enough to quit school, I begged my daddy to let me quit school. So he let me quit. So I quit school and didn't have nothing to do for a few years until I was able to go to work in the cotton mill.
Did you know what the sore was from or what caused it?
No, they said it was just an old sore that was hard to cure, but it went all around my leg and it stayed on there for over a year. It stayed on there.
Well, I worked. Well, I quit school and went to work because you had to. There was nobody. My dad had passed away and my mom couldn't work. She was physically unable to work. And you had to work or you didn't eat. And it was either school or work and eat. And so I had to quit school and go to work.
Well, we didn't have a farm of our own when I was growing up. We never had a farm, and we hired out to somebody else. Mama would take us to the fields and we'd hire out to a farmer that had cotton and stuff and hoe corn and hoe cotton and stuff like that. But I remember that hard work when I was little and growing up. I remember all that. And we had it pretty tough because Dad didn't make a whole lot in the cotton mills and with all the kids to feed. And sometimes I'd go to school and I'd have a hole in the bottom of my shoe. And
Your light's flashing again, Paul.
I'd have to put pasteboard in it to keep from getting wet. I'd be ashamed.
Okay, we'll just let it run. Hopefully my battery will work here. Okay, what do you remember about how you met?
Oh dear. Well, I guess I must have been about 18 at that time. And I was walking home from church one evening late with my friends that lived across the street from me. They was married, Lila and Clifford Croft. And we was good friends. And I was walking with them. It was a little chilly. I had my hands in my coat pocket. And so Gordon come walking up to us. And they knew Gordon, but I didn't know him. And he pulled my hand out of my coat pocket and was feeling on my finger for a ring. And my friend said, "You need to feel on her finger for a ring." And I didn't see him anymore that I know of. He worked at the cotton mill, and we lived right at the cotton mill. We lived right at the end of it. But then we was having a revival in the church. And he came into the church, I guess, the last night of the revival.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a surprise to see him come into the church because I didn't know anything about him, but his parents were Christian people. And he went to the altar and got saved that night.
Yeah.
And when he got saved, he got up from the altar. The pastor's wife was standing there. She was just a little thing. He just put his hands around her waist and just lifted her up off of the floor. And he he's been doing things like that ever since.
Oh.
Well, then I guess we must have
Well,
went
she
together.
didn't weigh much compared to a bale of cotton
I guess then we went together for
a year.
about a year. We just seen each other at church, you know, went to church together, and that's about the most of the times that we saw each other. Once in a while he'd come by the house, but we didn't have a long relationship or courtship or whatever.
Busy
Kinda-
working.
It was kind of funny in a way, because her dad didn't want her to, wouldn't let her go with boys. And I'd be going out the front end of the mill going home. I lived across the tracks over there at that time. And I'd see him and I'd whistle at him and make him wait on me, and I'd walk to town with him. He didn't want her to have a boyfriend. I'd have him to wait so I could walk with him. Just rubbed it in everywhere I could, you know. Yeah. He never came to our wedding. He didn't give her away. Her uncle gave her away.
Why?
He was up at his church in the mountains.
He didn't take time out to come
No.
to his own daughter's wedding?
No, we went to her house and had like a meal after the wedding
That's what
that
I
day.
had my cake, and it had the
Yeah.
We've got
Her
that
mom
picture of that.
Her
from
mom
Dick.
was there and all that, you know, but he wasn't there. He never, I don't remember when I saw him first after we was
Well, he'd
married.
usually go up, he must have been about, I don't know, maybe 50 miles away into another little town, maybe further than that. And he'd go up usually on Saturday afternoon and stay the night, and then he'd be there to church then for Sunday morning. So that was his excuse, but, you know, he could really got out of that if he'd really wanted to. But his brother gave me away, and he said, yeah, he would give me away. He said, if I'd had my way about it, I'd give you away a long time ago.
Now, which brother?
That was James.
James, okay.
James.
Yeah, and
Dennis' brother.
before
James.
we had, before we set any date, I met her at the company store there. Had a company store where people would go and buy their groceries and stuff like that, you know. And then if you had money to pay for it, you could. But if you didn't, they'd just take it out of your wages, you know. Anyway, I met her there this one day, and she was pretty upset about something. I don't know what anyway. And we was talking about it and talking about getting married. And I said, well, when do you think? She said, I don't know, but sooner the better.
Well, Dad was trying to make me turn a collar on his shirt, because I could sew, and I'd been sewing since I was about 16 years old, because I took sewing in school, and I used to make a lot of my clothes. And he was wanting me to turn a collar on his shirt, because it was ragged, and then you could take it off and turn it over, and then it'd be like a new one again. And somehow or another, I didn't want to do it, or because I didn't have a machine. I had to go to the neighbor to use her machine. So anyway, it kind of got me upset a little bit, and I'm just a little tired, so.
So you got married over a shirt collar.
So how old were you then?
Well, I was 18 or 19, then, because I was 22 when we got married.
Yeah,
And
because I had already come out of service.
I was married when
I went in when I was 19, and then I was about 22 or 23. Well, I was 23 when we got married.
No, you was 25 the day we got married, and I was 22. I was
Yeah,
22.
yeah.
He was 25 the day
Yeah,
we got
the day
married.
Are
we
we
got
sure of
married.
this now?
On his
Yeah.
birthday.
I was 25 the day we got married.
So your birthday present was getting
On
married.
his birthday.
Evidently, yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess we answered the next one. How'd you get engaged? That was.
Yeah.
And how'd you get married? We got that one figured out over a shirt collar. Okay, so when did you get married and where?
We got married.
See that packet hanging on the wall over there? Right around the corner.
We
Well-
got married in the little Nazarene church in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, in 1947.
November
And
30th.
Reverend Harry Crump was the minister that married us. And November the 30th on his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where did you first live when you got married?
Oh, we had
In
a,
an apartment on York Road.
that's, that's when he carried the little no-young carpet on his shoulder.
We was furnishing.
What did he do?
Doing some furnishing of the apartment before we moved in, and Sturgey Brothers had a furniture store there in town, which was a good mile at least from our apartment. And so, in order to get the linoleum for the kitchen, I carried it on my shoulder that mile from Sturgey Brothers over to the apartment, and we rolled it out.
A 9x12 rug.
It was 9 by 12. I carried it on my shoulder, just like carrying a sack of flour, you know.
We had bought a new bedroom set from these
Yeah.
people. We had bought that the
Sanders
week before
got
we
that,
got
or did
married.
have, didn't she?
Well, some of it is still being used today. In fact, our great granddaughter's using the bed. And we had and that was back during the wartime, and you couldn't hardly get a stove. We had a 5-burner stove that used kerosene, and so when we bought our bedroom set, this guy had a stove, and he said, "Well, if you want to buy that," he said, I'll sell you the stove too. I'll let you have the stove." So we bought a stove and a kitchen cabinet and a chrome table and chairs. That was 2 rooms we furnished. We had 3, but we only furnished 2. We didn't have no living room furniture.
No, we didn't have a living room. Had a bedroom and a kitchen.
We didn't have a living room in our house, I guess, until we moved out here to Romeoville. It was back in 1953, 54.
Okay. All right. I'll move down to some questions here Nate wanted me to ask you. He added these in here. Okay. What's your favorite scripture verse? Or if you have one, what is it?
Well, I have a lot of favorite ones myself, but
Yeah.
I remember is when I was little growing up, my mom and dad used to have 2 pictures hanging on the wall, and they was in like a cellophane or solenoid plastic things. And I remember these, they were scripture verses. 2 of them were scripture verses, and I would often look at them and read it. And now it escapes me what it was.
Pop. We'll move to you then.
Well, some favorite scriptures would be Psalms 30, verses 1 through 35.
I don't have enough tape for you to read all that, so.
1 through 5, and my other one is the 51st Psalm,
Okay.
David's Psalm of Repentance. That's Psalm 51.
Okay. What was your favorite pastor? Who was your favorite pastor?
I guess you would say Reverend Arms. I've liked all of our pastors, but there was only a couple that I felt real close to or comfortable with. And Reverend Arms, he was our pastor when we first came out here. And then he got sick, and he had to retire. But Reverend Nix was one that I always felt comfortable with, Reverend Nix.
Roy Nix.
And I like Day. I can feel comfortable with Day in them. I like Reverend Day.
Okay. What's something you've always wanted to do but have never done?
Go fishing in Canada.
You've done that.
I mean Alaska.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go fishing in Alaska.
In
I've
Alaska.
been deep sea fishing.
Okay.
I
Fishing in
don't
Alaska?
I don't know of anything that I really wanted to do that I didn't get done. I don't remember nothing like that.
Well, that's okay if you don't have anything. Okay. You put down here, what would you do if you had $1 million?
I would divide it up. I'd give something special to the mission field, and then I would make sure that my kids got some of it.
Well, that's the way I feel too. If I had $1
Mhm.
million, I would spread it out among the children, and I would give my church so much of it, and then I guess I would spend the rest of it on me, or buy me a house, or enjoy the rest
At
of
our
it.
age, I might buy a house at our age, but I don't know.
Well, we could always leave it to the children.
They always said if you got money to spend it on land, cause they're not making any more land.
Okay.
Well, they don't have any to spend on land, so we don't have to worry about that.
I don't know, I got $2, they can't buy much.
Okay, I think we covered that one about work and stuff. But when did you get your first car? And what was it?
Oh, you see, you didn't have a car until we went to Union, South Carolina, did you?
Yeah, I bought an old, it was earlier than a '37 Buick up in the mountains when your dad lived up at Hendersonville. I bought a car up there and had to go up there and had to charge the battery before it ever started to get it out. And then we had bought a '37 Chevrolet. That was our main car in Union, South Carolina.
That was when Sandra was about
Year old.
about a year old when we moved down there.
Yeah.
But while we was dating or anything, we never had
We
a
never
car.
had a car while I was dating.
We walked everywhere because we lived right in the edge of town. If we wanted to go to the drugstore and get some ice cream or something like that, well, we just walked. We walked to church because we didn't live but just a little ways from the church, so we walked to church.
Talking about funny things, one of my buddies, Will Dyke, he had his girlfriend out with us one time, you know, and we stopped up at the Griffin's drugstore, or Kings Mountain Drug, and was getting banana splits, and she ordered a banana split. Oh, Bill, he was going to be smart. He said, "Oh, don't split it. He said, take a whole one. I got money to pay for it." Yeah, he was. Yeah.
How did you learn to drive?
Gordon taught me how to drive when Sandra was when she was about a year old, and we in that little old '37 Chevy or whatever
Yeah, '37
year it
Chevrolet.
was,
Good
and it
car.
was a stick shift. I learned to drive on a stick shift. He didn't much want to teach me, but he did, and I learned to drive on that one. And I never got any driver's license until, and this was back in Sandra was born in '49. This was 1950, and I never drove anything hardly like that until we came out here. Then after we came out here is when I got my first driver's license in Lockport.
As in '54,
Or
1954.
in Romeoville. Well, it's probably around 55 when I got my license.
Could have
'cause
been.
I would drive from Lockport or from Romeoville to Lockport to do laundry. I'd put the laundry in the car and I would drive. I didn't have no driver's license. So I got a little bit afraid to do that, so I decided somebody said, well, go over to Downers Grove. It's easier over there for you to get your driver's license. So I went over to Downers Grove and got my driver's license. Didn't have any trouble. The guy gave them to me.
All right, I gotta switch.
All right. So one of the questions here is share your testimony about when you were saved or how you were saved or where you were saved or I think we caught a little bit of yours, Pop, but why don't you just give it to us anyway?
Well, I was saved in the first church in Kings Mountain, which is now the parsonage. It was the last night of the revival. Reverend Doby was doing the preaching. I didn't know him before, and I haven't heard of him since. I don't know where he went to or what, but he used to live, I was told, in Uncle Bud Robinson's house that he owned out west. And that's where he lived at the time. But this was in 1946 when I got saved.
Okay.
Well, I was saved when I was probably around 8 or 9 years old, and we used to have cottage prayer meetings in the homes, and that's where my first recollection of being saved, the cottage prayer meetings.
Yeah, they used to have a lot of cottage prayer meetings in them days. Matter of fact, even after we was married, well, before we was married, me and her used to sing for the music at the cottage prayer meetings and stuff like that. Play the guitar and sing it there.
Okay, now we're going to move to some of the war stuff, military stuff, Pop, and Mom too, because if you have memories of stuff back during that time too, but I've got your draft card notice, so we got that about when you went in and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any funny memory of anything that happened at boot camp?
Yeah, one thing I can think of hit my mind right away. It was we was standing in formation outside of the clinic, and everybody had to get their shots, of course, And I forget his name, but he was kind of a tall boy, and we was all out there taking and getting our shots, and then we'd come back out and get in line, formation. So they was talking about this, and this one tall guy, he was more or less, kind of the one that stood out in the crowd. So he went in, got his shot, and he got back out in line. He's standing there just a minute, plunk, down on the ground. He went and he fainted. We all got a big laugh out of that, about him going in. And another one was, I don't know if you want to put this on that tape or not.
Well, keep it clean. Keep it clean.
Well, I can. But when I was in getting ready to be shipped out, they had us in this place outside of Boston, Massachusetts there, in this little barracks and stuff. There was about 1 or 2 steps down from the back porch to the ground, and the shower room was a separate building by itself. And the barrack and the bunks were double decked at that time. But anyway, I had run out the back door. Instead of going down the steps, I just jumped off on the ground, and I hit a little root that was sticking up out of the ground about that far, and you could have heard my ankle pop from here to in the kitchen. And I just rolled on the ground, and the sergeant and them came out there, and so they sent me over to the hospital to have it checked out. And so it was all puffed up and everything like that when I got over there, or after that, and they had me in this bed, and so anyway, one of the other guys there, Brown was his name, they brought him over there, and they was putting him in the bed right beside of me, and I wouldn't let him see who I was, because he was a guy that was just, I don't know how they even took him in service. He just wasn't quite there. But anyway, they put out these little ducts for you to use at night, in case you had to get up and go to the bathroom. And they gave him one, and he asked him what it was and what it was for. I about fell out on the floor laughing about that. Yeah. I remember when I was in that hospital, I heard that my outfit was going to be leaving a certain day, and I asked to see the doctor, and he come in. I told him, I said, I don't care what you got to do. I said, you fix my foot so I can walk on it. I said, because I train with them, and I'm not going to stay here and let them go off and leave me. And he put 10 shots in my ankle that day to numb it and deaden it enough so I could stand on it and walk on it. And I carried my own stuff onto the ship. And then when I got on the boat, I went back on sick call, and I stayed in bed almost the whole time going across overseas, because my ankle was swelled so bad I couldn't hardly walk on it. Yeah, but Brown and his duck, that really took it. We all laughed about that. Yeah.
So your trip overseas was spent in sick bay, huh?
Most of it, yeah,
Most of it,
I'd say
huh?
90% of the time.
Now, how long did that take?
Uh,
How long did the trip take?
oh, I don't know. It took about 2 or 3 days to get over there. We
Okay.
was in a big ship, the Aquitania, which was at that time the third largest ship that there was. Queen Elizabeth and Mary was the two largest boats in, but this one was next to them.
Aquitania?
Aquitania, that
Okay.
was the name of it.
Okay. We're still trying to figure out about when you landed. Where did you land? In France?
No. We went into Scotland and then went into England and then crossed.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, no wonder we couldn't find anything on that.
And it was a sight to behold because as quick as our boat got into the landing area, they had groups of these Scottish women that would come on. They were down on their hands and knees scrubbing the floors and everything.
The boats?
Yeah,
Oh,
they scrubbed
okay.
it by hand.
Huh.
I,
So you went through Scotland, through England, and then where to?
over
France?
To France.
To
yeah.
France? Okay. Okay. What other countries did you go through?
Well, I went to Belgium. I went to Germany. I was in France, Germany, and Belgium that I know of. They said it was Belgium. I don't know. We couldn't tell what country was what, but they said it was what they call Alsace-Lorraine was the name of it. But I went through the area where the war ended in World War I, where they had all these big abutments, the Maginot Line it was called, and they had big concrete abutments built up. It was about as tall as that china chest in there, but they was staggered, so you couldn't drive a tank to them. And I don't know how many miles it run, but it runs several miles. That was tank protection for this area. And we went through the Oregon forest. That's where the World War One ended, they said. I don't know. Our outfit captured a warehouse there. It had all kind of fur jackets in it. I got a fur jacket, was made out of rabbit fur. I brought it home and gave it to my buddy at that time. I never kept it on. I don't know what he did with it.
Okay. Do you remember any of the towns or people that you met when you were going through France and Belgium?
Well, yeah, I would, Klaus, a man that goes to church, I was just almost near his homeland where he's over there. Metz, and we went across the Seine River
Yeah.
and Metz, and it's just small areas. Some of them never did get their names of even. They're so small, those little places, you know. I never went through any real big towns that, I mean, as far as being able to stop in them and stuff like that. When we was traveling, we went through some of them, but we never got their names.
What do you remember about when you got, I don't know what it was, where you were staying got shelled or whatever?
Yeah, well,
Where you got shell shocked from that, right?
oh yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Well, we had to dig these pits to put our gun in, and it was 15 feet long and about 12 feet wide, and you had to go down 3 feet from surface level, down 3 feet, and you build up a rebutment of 3 feet, and you leveled it off to 10 feet. And you set your gun in there and set it up. And then you put up what our gun crew tent, which would hold 10 or 12 people. And that's what we was in the night we got shelled, December the 6th. I can't tell you the year, but it was December the 6th. And it was freezing and raining and all that stuff, you know.
Was it in France or was it?
Well, we was over either in Belgium or Germany, I'm pretty sure.
Belgium or Germany, okay.
I can't, but we didn't know one spot from another.
Okay.
Anyway, they started shelling us, and it was German 88s is what it was. We could tell what kind of gun it was, but they was close enough to where when you heard by the time you heard the shell hit, you could hear the gun go off. That's how close it was. And we found out that the regular artillery outfit right behind us that was protecting was outside with a bonfire going. That showed them where we was at, you know. And my buddy that had his blankets with me was the first one to get hit in our outfit. I had just sat down on my blankets, and we had to take off our shirt and our shoes and rub our feet and our everything, you know, because of the cold weather. And I didn't have any shirt or shoes on when they started. I had my undershirt on, but that was, you know, in my pants. But they started that shelling, and Paul Perdue was my buddy, and he was standing up by the little stove we had inside of our tent. And he yelled and said, I'm hit. And shrapnel had got him on the arm, and where else I don't know, because I never got to see him after that. And so I just reached back and caught the bottom of the tent like this and pulled myself outside the tent and got down to where the truck was at and got underneath the truck, 2.5-ton Army truck. And that's where I stayed until the artillery outfit, they was real fast workers. They found out where this gun was, so they started shelling them, you know. And they had one of the guys that was in my outfit, another guy had got hit. He was in one of the shell holes, and he had got hit. And then the guy that had his blankets touching ours, Paul and mine, they put a shell right under his blanket and blew him clear over the stove. And George F. Gross was his name. We had two George F. Giddings and George F. Gross was in our outfit. Both of them was from New York. And then I did. I saw Paul after that. I walked him, me and him, and some of us went to where our headquarters was at. And I don't know, it must have been a mile down the road, like a little gravel road there. And we walked down there, and that's the way I was dressed, walked down that road with them, took him into the headquarters and got him treated there. But I never saw Paul after that. I don't know what happened to him, where he went to or nothing.
And what was his full name again?
Paul Perdue.
Paul Perdue.
Yeah.
But they took you into the hospital.
I don't know where they went to after that. I can't
But
remember.
I mean, though, they took you all into the hospital. You was in the hospital too, wasn't you?
Honey, I don't remember.
You do, because you told us that they give you insulin to shock you back.
Oh, that was after they got us back to England. Yeah, after they got us back to England, why they put us on this long ward, you know, and they give you it was like a shock treatment. They would drain your sugar down so low until you'd go. One or two of the guys went into comas. It was so low, they had drained too much. This would be first thing in the morning when they'd come in about 8 o'clock. You wasn't allowed to eat, so they got through with you. And they would they gave us these shots, and it would take, in other words, they told us that if it took out or gave you, I forget which it was now, 155 units of that stuff, it would kill you. But if they would give you 150, and anyway, they would take this out, give you this shot, and it would drain your system down to the lowest point that you could go without, and some guys went into comas and they had to work on them real fast to get them back. But they would give us this shot of insulin after about an hour or 2 hours after they give us that first shot, and it was supposed to snap your system back. Like today they give you shock treatments, I guess, and stuff like that, but them days they would overload you with that insulin or whatever it was, and it would supposed to snap your system back, nerve system, to keep it from going all out of whack on you, you know.
All right.
But some it worked on, some it didn't.
Okay, what do you remember about the truck you ducked under? There was something about that you told me before.
And when I got under the truck, I didn't realize which truck it was, but it was the ammunition truck. Heavy explosive was in that truck that I hid under, keep them getting blown up by one of them shells. Yeah.
If they had hit that, everything would have been gone.
Yeah, yeah.
You had another experience too, to where you were standing on the back of the truck when this plane was coming down.
Oh, yeah.
You thought it was
And
going to bomb
one
you.
area, I don't remember just which one now, but we had stopped in this one area, and the truck, it was with my gun, was stopped here, and this plane came over, and I was standing on the tailgate of that truck watching that plane come, and it came in and came right at me and just went right over the top of us there, and went like, I don't know, about a couple football fields distance away from me, and shelled something out there. And he didn't fire a shot at me, but I had to be looking him right in the eye, whoever was driving that plane, but he didn't fire a shot at me. And I didn't move, I didn't do nothing, I just stand there watching him like a statue.
But didn't you tell the Lord if He got you out of there, you would...
Oh, that was when it was, before I crawled under the back of that truck. That time, or just right after I got under the truck one. I don't know, I never knew why I said it at that time. I do now, but I never then. It was bad enough, and I just blurted out the words, Lord, if you get me out of this, I'll do what you want me to do. And it never hit me anymore till after I got back home.
All right, Mom, what do you remember about wartime? You were back here, but what do you remember about things in wartime? You mentioned it's hard to get a stove, and
It is.
What was it?
It was hard to get a lot of stuff. It was hard to get stockings. You couldn't hardly find any silk stockings. And sugar was rationed. Gas was rationed. You had food. You had ration stamps that you used if you went to buy sugar. You'd have to give them so many stamps of your stamps for a bag of sugar. Just a lot of things that and coffee, stuff like that. Yeah. You couldn't get much of it. It was just a very little bit of it. But then I remember when the war ended, the cotton mill whistle started blowing, and people was laughing and crying and taking on, going to the churches and praying. The day the war ended.
Did any of your siblings fight in the war too? Because you were the youngest of 8,
Yeah,
Pop.
they didn't. I had 2 brothers that had some service time, but they never was in that war.
Okay. Mom?
I had uncles that was in there. Yeah, my two brothers was in the Navy.
Albert?
Albert and Crawley was both in the Navy. Albert was hurt. He got hit in the head.
Not in the army, not while he was overseas.
He didn't see battle or nothing like that. But while he was in Washington D.C., he was out with his girlfriend one night, or out with a girl, and somebody come up and hit him in the side of the head. I don't know
From
if they
behind, he never did.
they had knucks on or what they had on, but anyway, it caused a blood clot. And when we found it out, they had sent several telegrams, and somehow or another we didn't get them. And when we did find it out, he was in the hospital, and they said, they told us whenever we went to Washington, Mom and Dad and me, and they told Dad, said, don't get your hopes up, said he had a blood clot. They had to take a blood clot off his brain. And I guess that they didn't have a lot of hopes for him because they never put a plate in his head. He always had this soft spot in his head.
On the right side of his head, wasn't it? Yeah.
And my other brother, Crawley, something happened to one of his eyes. He got hurt. I don't know if he saw battle or not, if Crawley saw battle or not.
I don't think so.
But anyway, they both come out with disabilities.
Now what about your uncles that were in?
I had two uncles that was in. I don't know where they were. I know one of them, Coleman. I know he was in Hawaii, because he sent me a little strand of beads. It was little tiny shells. He brought that back to me from Hawaii. And James, I don't know where James was. That's my dad's brothers. They was in service. And I think Dad had about 2 or 3 or 4 brothers that was in service, but I don't know if they fought or not. I don't remember.
Okay. Paul, you got any other questions? All right.
Is that the end?
No. Now it's your turn. You got anything you want to say to your descendants here? This is going to be handed down for generations, so you got anything you want to say when everybody in here is long gone? What do you want them to remember?
Well, I don't know. I hope that we've done some good things, and we've got a nice big family. I enjoy the family. Enjoy my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren, and my children. So we've got a nice big family that we appreciate and love, and hope that they live a long time.
Yep.
Like us.
I've always said that anybody could do whatever they wanted to me, but don't mess with my kids.
You want
My
that all for
family.
yourself?
My family, my family means all to me, and I think it's, people ask us, how do you make it for 62 years? Well, you know, you have to take
Well, it's
everything.
not been hard.
No,
It's not been
it ain't
hard.
been hard.
They say a lot of give and take, and so Gordon's took a lot. So.
I won't say
Or
anything else.
I think he has.
Do you have any advice for your grandkids and great grandkids?
Go to church and stay in church.
Just live good, clean,
Live a good,
Christian
clean life.
lives.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to go. Best thing to do.
And for those that aren't married and those that will get married, just remember what my dad always said, like I told you earlier. If there's a problem between you and your spouse, it takes 2 of you to make an argument. One can't argue by themselves. He never would do that. He just, and I've always lived by that too. That if you start the arguments, well, then sometimes that leads to something else. And make sure when you get married and that it's not just for the present tense, but it's for the long haul.
Well, I guess that I got married, I didn't think about ever
No.
not being married or getting
I
a
didn't
divorce or anything like that. Because we took our vows till death do us part, and I never thought about leaving or getting
No,
anything.
I
You
didn't-
felt like killing him to make it death do us part earlier, huh?
Well, sometimes I thought maybe I could just walk off somewhere, go off somewhere, but not because of them, but because of my problems. And I thought, well, I ain't got nowhere to go. I wouldn't know where to go, so I may as well just hang around, stick around.
I remember one thing that was always funny to me, and it'd probably be funny in later years and with you guys now, is I know when she was expecting, I think it was Sandra.
Well, Tommy won, I don't.
Yeah, you or Sandra
Tommy, I
won,
think it
but
was.
anyway, she would try to turn over in the bed after she got so far along and she couldn't turn over. She'd reach over and grab my hair, my head, and hang on the head and turn over in the bed. And a lot of it got to where it wouldn't even wake me up. It didn't even wake me up.
Did you have any cravings with any of us?
Oh,
I
yeah.
did one time.
Oh, mercy. He really did. That was with Wanda.
Man, I was telling you, I couldn't get enough of turkey and dressing.
And he didn't go down to Joliet downtown to the drugstore where
That's
they
where
had
they
the
would serve it?
little eating place, and he would eat dressing and turkey down there. He could not get enough of it.
No, I couldn't get enough.
But before Sandra was born, I couldn't get enough juices and oranges. I'd go into the store and see all these juices in a can, and I just felt like I could just drink all of that juice. I was just so thirsty for juice or oranges or something. Oranges is what I crave the most.
Yeah, I really had the cravings then, boy. I'll tell you, I craved that stuff. I couldn't get enough of it.
Well, any last words?
No, I guess that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Oh, yeah.